called out to anybody who would listen. The people who refused to listen were the people who were supposed to listen. It was supposed to be the police who were meant to protect and serve George Floyd, because George Floyd was an American citizen and George Floyd was a human being. George Floyd deserved humanity. When he couldn't breathe, none of us could breathe.
That's right.
A public lynching took place on the 25th of May Day, calling all cars, inflicting all wounds, ignoring all scars. A public lynching took place, but in the form of please, I can't breathe. Where is my mother? She is passed on beyond me, yet I can see her face as clear as ever. She comforts me as 8 minutes have been 5 too many, and how many times too many, how many cried too many, how many died too many times. You giving lies like he didn't comply, as if the ends justify the whys. They blame the symptoms for the sickness, like the fever isn't a result of the unstable human condition. A public lynching took place again and again. Why riot? Protest, why try it? Full of pain, why diet? Give us this day our daily dose of a narrative. Inhumane how they comparing us. Fear when they stare at us. This is America. Please rise for the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see that the system created victims, and people who ignore history are devoid of their wisdom? Amen.
I can't breathe as the echo fills our soul, building strength and sorrow. Oh, you carry a heavy load, oh Lord, fighting for survival. How far can this go? United for dream out loud.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Tamika Green, and I'd like to welcome you to Why Now? Justice for Us with Attorney Ben Crump. Y'all get ready, get ready, get ready. This will be an experience. Again, my name is Dr. Green. I wear many hats here at SDSU. I'm a professor in the College of Education. I'm also a faculty scholar for the BRC, and I oversee the Henrietta Goodwin Scholars Mentoring Program for our Black freshmen. And I also direct the African American Mentoring Program. And this is the program that made this event possible by the support of SDSU's Student Success Fee. Asia Jones, who is a PhD student here in the JDP, our Joint Doc program. Shout out to Marva Capello, the director of that program. Asia is the graduate assistant for the AAMP mentoring program, and she wrote a phenomenally strong proposal that allowed us to bring in several speakers, from Nikki Giovanni to Tamika Mowry, Marcus Scribner from Blackish, Cora Jakes Coleman, so many dynamic men and women, to name a few this spring. And it also, the proposal also provides professional development opportunities for our Black graduate and undergraduate students. So we are excited that you are here with us tonight, and we're excited to have Attorney Ben Crump with us. As with anything we do, we cannot do this work alone. So I would like to recognize our partners who helped make this day possible, the Black Resource Center, and also African Student Union. So before we start, just a few housekeeping items. Before we introduce our moderators, we want to see all your beautiful faces. So please turn on your cameras if you feel comfortable to do so. Secondly, if you want to chat, please utilize the chat and ask questions and make comments. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end so that you can ask questions of Attorney Crump. And lastly, if you would mute yourself during the discussion to ensure that we can hear our speakers clearly, that would be wonderful. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderators for the evening. The first moderator, Shaki Moore, and we call him Little Ben Crump. Yes, we do. Shaki is the Vice President of External Relations elect. He's the Vice President elect for External Relations for the Associated Students. He is also an HGS, a Henrietta Goodwin Scholars academic coach. He's an HGS scholar. He's also a staff member for the Black Resource Center, and he's a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. He's also the ASU Diversity Chair. He's the NAACP Membership Chair, and he also is the public relations person for the Student African American Brotherhood. And Shaki is also a communications major, which is why he was one of the best people for this job tonight as a moderator. So I'd like to welcome Shaki Moore as one of our moderators. If you all would give him a hand, and then I'll have Asia introduce Stephen Payne.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Stephen Payne. Stevie is
Asia, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Oh, I just can't hear you. I'm sorry.
All right. I'd like to introduce Stephen Payne. He is a 9th grade student at Helix High School. During his middle school years, he served as president of the middle school all 3 years of his middle school years. He is currently the 2nd vice president of Jack and Jill. He's active in his local community and in his church community. Stevie is an all-around amazing young man who's going to go on great far. He's the junior Ben Crump next to Shaki. Please give it up for Stevie. Dr. Green, I'm turning it back to you.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll show a video providing Ben Crump's bio.
Benjamin L. Crump is the principal of Ben Crump Law, a Washington, D.C. based firm, and founder of the Ben Crump Social Justice Institute, headquartered at Tennessee State University in Nashville, Tennessee. Overcoming very humble beginnings in rural North Carolina, Mr. Crump has quickly become one of the most recognizable and successful lawyers in America. He has provided legal representation and recovered millions of dollars for his clients in some of the most high-profile cases in the United States. In January 2006, Crump relentlessly pursued justice on behalf of the parents of Martin Lee Anderson, the 14-year-old who died the day after he was restrained, beaten, and suffocated at the Bay County Juvenile Boot Camp. This was the largest claims bill for an individual in a wrongful death case ever approved by the state of Florida. Crump recently achieved a very critical victory as lead attorney on what had been characterized as the landmark voters' rights case of this millennium, when 9 African-American women were arrested with guns drawn for alleged voter fraud in Madison, Florida. Crump again led the fight for justice as the lead attorney for the family of Trayvon Martin, who was killed by a neighborhood watch volunteer in Sanford, Florida. Crump's representation of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, led President Obama to call on U.S. Congress to pass legislation for police body camera videos. He served as the attorney for 12-year-old Tamir Rice in Cleveland, Ohio, Alicia Thomas in Los Angeles, California, Terrence Crutcher in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Antonio Zambrano Montes in Pasco, Washington, who were all killed by police, captured on video. He also sought justice for Janie Liggins and 9 other victims in the police rape case of 13 black women in Oklahoma City, and Robbie Tolan in the landmark U.S. Supreme Court case where a professional baseball player was shot in front of his house in a predominantly white neighborhood. Attorney Crump is a benefactor and mentor to many. As board chairman of the Legal Services of North Florida, Attorney Crump and his partner donated $1 million to the organization's capital campaign to ensure that poor people would continue to have quality legal representation and access to the courts. Mr. Crump was appointed the first board chairman of Florida's Big Bend Fair Housing Center Incorporated, a federal grant organization dedicated to the eradication of housing discrimination. Attorney Crump believes in fighting to preserve the justice that minorities have achieved throughout the civil rights era, and has served as the 73rd president of the National Bar Association, as general counsel to the Florida chapter of the NAACP, and as president of the National Civil Rights Trial Lawyers Association. He was the first African American to serve as president of the Federal Bar Association for Florida's Northern District. He was named the National Trial Lawyers Top 100 Lawyers in America, Ebony Magazine Power 100 Most Influential African Americans, and the National Newspaper Publisher Association's Newsmaker of the Year. Bestowed the SCLC Martin Luther King Servant Leadership Award, the NAACP Thurgood Marshall Award, and the National Civil Rights Museum Freedom Award. Crump is a life member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the NAACP, and the National Urban League. Over the years, Mr. Crump has dedicated his areas of practice in civil rights, employment law, personal injury, wrongful death cases, and class actions. Crump is executive producer of the groundbreaking documentary Woman in Motion about Nichelle Nichols and the race to space. Nichols was among the first African-American actresses on TV and played Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, the original series. He hosts the television series Evidence of Innocence about wrongfully incarcerated individuals exonerated by DNA evidence, is host of the A&E documentary series Search for Justice, and is author of the book Open Season, an insightful account of deep racial injustice in America. Benjamin Crump is a committed family man, and he believes the value of his family is critical to his success. The measure of a man's life should be defined by the impact he made on the lives of his fellow human beings. What impact are you making? Benjamin L. Crump.
This money, these books, this education that the money that is used to stop that young man from pulling that trigger that they so much talk about. When they talk about black and brown people, they're going to talk about the power. They aren't going to talk about what we're learning in school or what we need.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Okay, I hear some background.
Okay. Yes, sir, absolutely.
Well, wonderful. I am honored to be with you all this evening. Asha and Dr. Green, it's so good to be with you all again at San Diego State University. I am coming to you live from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I'm with the family of George Floyd as they are enduring the trial of Officer Derek Chauvin, the police officer who kept his knee on his neck for not 8 minutes and 46 seconds, but 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And we are endeavoring to get justice. And I know we're going to talk about that a lot. But I think one of the things I want to talk about in the few moments I have before Mr. Moore and Mr. Payne start cross-examining me tonight, I want to answer the question on your flyer, why now? And before I do that, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge some very special people who I know are on the Zoom, and I graduated from San Diego State, one being the incredible film producer, P. Frank Williams, who I got.
Hey, what's up, baby?
How you doing?
I had to jump on here because you got my school, man. What's up, Aztecs? Yeah.
And he always keep it real. We did the award-winning Who Killed Tupac docuseries for A&E, and Frank is an incredible person and uplifting the culture and representing for the culture. So thank you, Frank. And also we have Simic. I don't know if he's on here, but Cynic graduated from there also. You all may know him as Mr. Checkpoint. I was trying to see him. I know he told me I was speaking at his school, and you know, if you go to his social media, Mr. Checkpoint, he literally documents every police shooting, killing, injustice in America. And he's always fighting for equal justice and respect for marginalized minorities. And he represents your Aztec family very well. So I have to give my brother a shout out. We talk often on these injustices. And then the last person I will acknowledge, Ms. Dr. Jones and Dr. Green, would be Keon Harrell, who is one of the best brothers I ever met. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at his Grace Under Fire, as he is an award-winning jazz musician, but many people know him as the Black father who at the Arlo Hotel the day after Christmas last year was able to keep his composure when a woman falsely accused his 14-year-old son, Keon Harrell Jr., of stealing her iPhone. And literally, Dr. Green just, assaulted and battered him like you wouldn't believe, Marva. And I remember what my wife said. My wife said, baby, if that was me, you wouldn't be representing me civilly. You'll be representing me criminally. But Keon Harrell was able to keep his composure and grace and still defend his Black son and really help represent for Black fathers in a way I hadn't really seen happen in America. And that video went viral. I mean, it's been seen over 1 million times, this Black man saying to this woman, you know, do you think you are the only one who have an iPhone? And how he did not lose his composure. And because he thought quick on his feet and recorded her, that's the reason why she's now being charged criminally for falsely accusing and assaulting and battering his son. And I digress just to say this, Dr. Green and Dr. Jones. Think about how many minority men are sitting in prison because they were falsely accused by white women. We have to make sure that we continue, just because his son wasn't killed and he was there to protect them, because you can only imagine if he wasn't there and his son would have tried to defend himself against this woman and the police showed up, how this narrative might have ended. And for parents of children of color, that is our reality. And that's what we worry about constantly. So I just want to acknowledge my brother who I'm honored to represent, and that's Keon Harrell. Thank you for being on the Zoom tonight. And I think we start there, Dr. Green and Dr. Jones. Why now? That's what I wanted to answer the question before we got into talking with the great moderators for the evening. And I know my people are all telling me you got to do Don Lemon at 9 o'clock because they want the updates on the George Floyd case. Well, y'all gonna get those updates before CNN get them tonight. So y'all got a special vantage point. When you think about the past year and we talk about why now, literally during 2020, during the coronavirus pandemic, it seemed like everything shut down in America, Bonnie, except implicit bias and police brutality. I mean, you think about all the injustices we saw, Vincent, when everybody was supposed to be home quarantining. We saw that Ahmaud Arbery, our young brother who was lynched for jogging while black, and 2020 in Brunswick, Georgia. I'm not talking about in 1940 or 1950. I'm talking about literally last year. This brother was lynched. And then that was in February 26, 2020. I'm sorry, March 23rd, 2020. And February 26, 2020, Breonna Taylor, she was at her home, and you had these police officers in Louisville, Kentucky, executing an unnecessary, an unconstitutional, and an illegal no-knock warrant when they bust open her front door and literally executed her with 6 bullets in her body while she was practically naked in the sanctity of her own home. And then as we were trying to come to terms with how they killed this innocent Black woman in her home, then we saw a video that I believe in many ways galvanized cities all across America, and in fact, cities all across the world, when we watched George Floyd be denied any consideration, any professionalism, and any humanity from the 4 Minneapolis police officers who kneed him on his neck and his back and literally tortured him to death. Even under the Geneva Convention, I would submit it would be defined as torture. And they continue to try to justify it. I call it, Kiana, as you know, the intellectual justification of discrimination that we see happen over and over again in courtrooms in America. And just, Dr. Green, while we were dealing with that, we then saw a horrific video in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where Jacob Blake Jr., this young man, was walking away from the police. I mean, it still boggles my mind how the police can say you're a threat when you walking away from them. And so Jacob Blake Jr. was walking away from them, and you see the video just as clear as day. He's not posing any violence to them. He's not posing a threat to them. He's doing like most Black people, most Hispanic people do. We try to get away from the police. We don't stand there and try to confront the police. He's trying to get away from them, and the police follow him. He's trying to get into his car to get him, his 3 little boys, out of a volatile situation. And the police grab the back of his t-shirt and shoot him 7 times, point blank range, having deliberate indifference as to whether he lives or dies. Because if you shoot a person that many times, point blank range, how can you have a care whether they're gonna live or die? And paralyzed Jacob Blake Jr. in front of his 3 young sons, ages 8 years old, 5 years old, and 3 years old. And it was the 8-year-old son's birthday. So you can only imagine how his birthdays are gonna be for the rest of his life. And just as we're dealing with that, you then hear about Anthony McClain, a brother, and don't take my word for it, go watch the video yourself of Anthony McClain. P. Frank, he literally runs out of his shoes trying to run.
Show me that video, bananas.
I mean, it's close to y'all. It's in Pasadena. We ain't talking about something in Minneapolis that we need y'all to march for, something in Kenosha. We talking about right here in Southern California. This brother is trying to get away from the police, not posing no threat at all. And they shoot him twice in the back. And then when they have him on the ground, for whatever reason, they put handcuffs on him, because after you shoot a Black person, or they restrain, they still always have to put us in handcuffs, Dr. Jones. And so he's down there, and he has the combination, I argue, between Jacob Blake Jr. and George Floyd, because he got shot in the back going away. And then while he was on the ground in handcuffs, bleeding out, you literally hear him on the video while the police officer got his knee in his back say, "Hurry up, I can't breathe." And he goes unconscious about 1:44 later. And so you're dealing with all of this. You also throw in Dijon Kinsey, who also was shot in the back in Los Angeles. Trayford Pellerin, who was shot in the back in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. All these in 2020 now. I'm not talking about anything but 2020. And then you have Andre Hill in Columbus, Ohio, holding a cell phone. There was a 311 call because he was trying to get his car to crank up. Called 311, not 911, Dr. Green. Police showed up, inexplicable. It's a non-emergency call about a loud car. Mr. Hill walks out of the garage, not knowing the police didn't have their lights on anything. It's a non-emergency 311 call. But when the black man came out holding his cell phone up for light, the police immediately shot him. And to add insult to injury, Keon, all these videos are very difficult to watch. But when he's down on the ground, you have the police officers, because he didn't have his body camera on initially, he cut it on, and they play back for 60 seconds when you turn it on. And that's the only reason we see that Mr. Hill had his hands up and was not posing any threat. In fact, the policewoman who was partnered with the cop who killed Andre Hill testified that the reason she didn't shoot because he didn't pose any threat and she had no reason to shoot. And that's the only reason they charged him, on top of the fact that all those officers on the Columbus Police Force, and by the time when you get past the 5-minute mark, you got like 20 officers on the scene. This man is lying on the ground. One of the supervisors comes up while he's laying there after 2 minutes and says, "He's still breathing, cuff him." And they handcuff him. And you literally see him breathing on the ground, and you have all these officers walking around with flashlights, like they're looking, trying to find a weapon. And none of them, Mr. Moore, Mr. Payne, not one of them offers him any medical assistance. These are the people who are supposed to be trained to preserve life. These are the people who are supposed to be trained as first responders. When they see this black man lying on the ground who's been shot 3 times in handcuffs, fighting for air, and not one of them offered him assistance. And that was on December the 22nd. And literally, it shows that they, for whatever reason in 2020, when everything was shut down, seemed to have not stopped in any way, fashion, or form engaging in excessive force. And now we're here at George Floyd case, and we're intensely going through police protocols as it relates to their interaction with marginalized minorities about how we can be better, America, how we can be more just, how we can have a more just society where Breonna Taylor gets to sleep in peace at night, where George Floyd gets an opportunity to take another breath and be able to extend his life, where Ahmaud Arbery gets to run free and not be lynched for jogging while black, and where all of our children can have an equal opportunity at life and liberty in the pursuit of happiness. That's why now because we have to do something to stop these hashtags. And I was taught it's better to strike a match than to curse the darkness. And when I strike a match, I see the light that you all at San Diego State University holds for the world. Your light can help make this world better. And we just have to understand that based on precedents of our people, our ancestors, we will overcome this racist and discriminatory system. And our children will be better and have a better world because of what we do, not what anybody else does. We hope to have allies, but if we don't have any allies, we have to continue to say, we will stand up for our children. And with us standing up, hopefully others will stand up with us to say we can do better, America. So I'll stop there. I know we'll get into George Floyd and some of the things that happened during the first week of the trial. We'll talk about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, the fact that that legislation, there are 3 prongs, and we'll talk about the civil justice, criminal justice, but then legislative justice. And George Floyd, this is an opportunity. We don't often get this, to get 3 prongs of justice delivered that can impact not just his family, but impact all of American society. May it please the court, Mr. Payne, Mr. Moore, I will respect the court and answer whatever questions you ask.
Yes, thank you so much. Now we'll be moving on to our moderated portion of tonight's event and question and answer. So I just wanted to start us off with a question because you mentioned a lot about representing different people, but also it's been in multiple times where people made the phrase, I cannot breathe. And that phrase has been coined for our movement and been a word that we use at protests and things like that. But it's almost a thing that Black people have to face every day in this society. Of while we may not have our a knee on our neck by a police officer, but it seems as our Blackness creates that knee on our neck by society. So what do you feel, would you give advice to a Black man or woman growing up in this environment who feel like they cannot breathe?
You know, we have to, as much as we can, be able to speak truth to power, but also we have to make sure people know that we come from a people that have been able to overcome whatever obstacles and challenges and injustices that they put before us. You got to remember, the reason people often ask me, Attorney Crump, why do you do it and how do you continue to do it? And the reason is twofold. Number one, I think about my daughter, Brooklyn, my 8-year-old little princess, and I look at her and I see so much optimism and hope in her eyes. And P. Frank, one of the things I literally know is that we can't give up, Mr. Moore, because if we give up, it's like I'm giving up on her. And we can never give up on our children. I mean, we just cannot. Our ancestors didn't give up on us. You know, when they were in the slave fields, you know, the cotton fields during slavery, they dreamed of a day where you would go to a great institution like the San Diego State University. You know, they dreamed about that day, that it was going to be better for our children and our grandchildren. And so they never gave up on the hope of a better tomorrow. And so we can never give up on the hope. That's number one. Number two is simply the fact that when I was in the first year of law school, Mr. Harold, they taught us about precedents, and they taught us that everything must be based on precedents. They tried to indoctrinate us, really. It was kind of deep because they would tell us every decision has to be based on precedent. You can't base it on your own thoughts and so forth, because we want consistency in the law. We have to look to the past to base what decisions we're going to make on for today, so we can have consistency in the law, so we can shape how the law will move forward in the future. Now, Mr. Moore, I didn't accept that, because I knew if we based everything on precedents, the precedents in America was that the United States Supreme Court said slavery was legal. And so if we accepted their precedents, you and I would still be slaves today. But I understood what they were trying to convey to us, that based on what has happened in the past, it is a likely indicator of what is to happen in the future. And so when I think of the precedents of Black people in America and what we have overcome, I think of the precedents of how Black people overcame slavery. I think of the precedents of how Black people overcame the Middle Passage. I think of the precedents of how Black people overcame at the formation of this country being defined as 3/5 of a human being. I think of the precedents how Black people in America overcame the Dred Scott decision that said there were no rights that a Black man had that a white man was bound to respect. I think about the precedents of how Black people overcame Reconstruction and the carpetbaggers. I think about how Black people overcame Plessy v. Ferguson in 1878, where it said separate but equal. I think of how Black people overcame the precedents in America of Jim Crow. I think about the precedents of Black people overcoming Jim Crow's younger son, a much wiser, more educated Jim Crow Jr. Esquire, PhD, Dr. Green. And I think about, based on that precedence, how no matter what they throw at us today, Dr. Moore, no matter what they put before Black people and brown people and marginalized minorities, no matter what they put before us, based on precedents, we gonna overcome it, because nothing they have done thus far throughout history has been able to stop you, Brother Moore. It has not been able to stop you, Brother Payne. It has not been able to stop y'all from being able to achieve your dreams, going to a great educational institution and being able to have an opportunity at grasping your dreams. Nothing they have done has been able to stop that. And that's why I am so confident that Black people, brown people, we will be able to excel because of what you all are gonna do. And you all are gonna do, y'all don't even know what you all are gonna, y'all can't even fathom how great you all are gonna be, what impact y'all are gonna make on society. That's why I'm so encouraged, man. And that's why I can breathe easy, because I look at the future. When I look at y'all, and I know the future is bright. I see it. And so that's why we keep fighting. We keep fighting because we know we will win this war.
Thank you. And to add on to the topic of just everything in the Black community, what types of conversations do you think we should be having with our youth, or what conversation do you think we should be having with our families that you think will help us seek justice?
You know, right now, I know P. Frank and I was talking about this last week when I was in California. Obviously, the whole world is watching this trial of George Floyd. And it, maybe because of Brooklyn, it was so emotional when you heard that little 9-year-old girl who had love written on her shirt who was with Darnella, the 17-year-old young girl who videotaped, the torture. When she said, they asked him nicely at first to get his knee off his neck. All I could think is precious innocence. The PSTD that not only those young people are going to have, but what we all have just by having to have these conversations with our children about how certain people in our community are brutalized, not just by rogue racist police, but by a racist, discriminatory legal system. And so we have to have these conversations with our young people, kind of like what my mama had with me. My mother told me once, and I'll be personal just for a minute, I grew up poor in the projects. My mother raised 3 boys by herself. Like most Black women, she was a miracle worker. And I remember, and I'm aging myself now, Frank, I remember Air Jordans had just came out and everything. Everybody had Air Jordans, these $100 tennis shoes. I know they cost $300-400 now, but it was $100 when we were little, and that was a lot of money, And I remember everybody getting them, Keon, and I wanted some too. And I remember being upset, somewhat disappointed that my mother couldn't get us the Air Jordans so we can go back to school in these new shoes. And I never forget what my mother said. And I think about how, what an ungrateful little boy we were. But thank God my mother was who she was. And I remember her words to this day, and I live by them. My mother said, baby, life ain't fair. Life is hard. You make it fair by what you bring to the table. And if you don't bring anything to the table, don't expect anybody to let you sit down at the table. And I never forgot those words. She would say that to us frequently and often. And I remember when I graduated from Florida State University, the first thing I said to my mother is, now I'm bringing something to the table, Mama, because she said education was the great equalizer, because once you had it up here, nobody could take it away from you. And she said that was something to bring to the table. And she said, when you get at the table, you try to help others get to the table. And I always remember my mama breaking that down to me. And so when I think about what advice I would give to young people, just always remember, life ain't gonna be fair. You're naive if you expect it to be fair. Life is gonna be hard. It's gonna be challenging. But God has given you everything. He has equipped you with everything you need to not only survive, but thrive in this life. And I'm not just saying something from somebody who wasn't in the same situation or worse than you were. I mean, we were in the projects. My mother worked 2 jobs, but God had a plan for me, and he has a plan for you. And as long as that you go and work hard, nothing will be able to stop you. John Johnson, the founder of the famous African-American museum, Ebony, he said, there is no denying excellence. You know, not racism, not discrimination, nothing can deny excellence. You go out and be excellent every day and you'll be fine. And you know, always remember this. There's no guarantee at success. Nobody can tell you how to be successful, but everybody can tell you how not to be successful. And that is to not try. And so you got to do your best every day And you got to be honest with yourself when you look in that mirror, and you have to say, have I done my best? And because when you think about the blood of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Trayvon Martin and Ahmaud Arbery and so forth, you're here for a reason. You're here for a reason. Make it matter. Make it matter.
Yeah, so I see a lot of people putting questions in the chat. I don't want to ignore those questions.
Okay.
We will have a time where you ask Attorney Crump questions yourself, or if you don't feel comfortable, you can direct message them to me or Stevie, and we can ask them for you. Oh, but my next question is something that you said really resonated with me, and that's speaking truth to power, because we had Tamika Mallory come and she said those exact words of speaking truth to power. But sometimes speaking truth to power comes with a cost, because we looked at it in the past where we've seen like people like Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and many others die behind speaking truth to power. And I know in the back of your head that since you are such a prestigious attorney that is known for speaking truth to power, how do you put that in the back on the back burner to continue to do your job and the duty that you signed up to do?
Now, it's a great question, Mr. Moore, and I'll try to make it brief because I know they're going to try to pull me away in a minute. Chadwick Boseman, the great actor, I got the opportunity to make my Hollywood debut in the movie Marshall, about my personal hero, Thurgood Marshall. Me and Trayvon Martin parents were in the last scene of the movie. And, you know, if you know anything about Hollywood, Frank will tell you, man, we had 2 minutes, 3 minutes at most in the movie. We spent 2 days out there and we shot the same scene 100 times from every different angle. But it gave me an opportunity to get to know Chadwick good. And we were in the makeup room and it was so profound. He was so committed to his craft. He kept asking me all these questions about being a civil rights lawyer. And he kept saying, you know, you're like Thurgood Marshall. How is it when you go to a town and the black people happy and the white people mad and so forth? I said, it's very realistic, you know. Yeah, the height of arrogance to think everybody gonna love you. We get the death threats, you know, all this kind of stuff, the racist judges, but that's part of it. And he said, well, how do you deal with it when you get the death threats? Because Thurgood Marshall got death threats every day of his life, Brother Moore. And so I said, I do what Thurgood Marshall did. You know, you report it to the authorities, and literally I reported to the FBI. And then I show up to court the next day because they can't see that they intimidate us. They can't see that they can make us fear or frightful, because they got to know that there are some things that is worth dying for to us. And our children's future is worth dying for. And so that's how you speak truth to power. You don't bite your tongue, because you know, despite what the power can do to you, you're fighting for something greater than you. And that is the future of your children. Y'all remember the great movie and book Roots? Y'all remember what Alex Haley said Kunta Kinte did when he held up his daughter Kizzy May to the heavens in the moonlight? Behold, the only thing greater than thyself is what he said. Because the only thing greater than you is what you create. Always remember that. And that's worth dying for, and that's worth speaking truth to power for. All right, I got 12 minutes for Don Lemon bringing me up at the top of the hour.
Okay, I'll make this question short and sweet. Do you feel like you've ever lost any cases due to social injustices?
Well, I'm grateful, and I thank God I've never lost a case in all of the high-profile cases we've worked. We've always either recovered a verdict or a huge settlement. Obviously, this year we are doing incredible when it comes to raising the value of Black life. Breonna Taylor, we got $12 million for this Black woman with no video, And before that, the highest amount a Black woman had ever got in America was $1 million. And so, in a pre-suit settlement. And also we got a lot of social reforms. So her settlement was historic in every level. And then with George Floyd, obviously we got the largest settlement in the history of America pre-suit when it came to police brutality. So we are, as a private lawyer under the 7th Amendment, we have a right to bring a private action for a private citizen who has been wronged. We don't get to control the 10th Amendment criminal justice. And sometimes people get confused. The only people who can charge somebody and put somebody in jail is the government, point blank, period. It's the 10th Amendment that allows state powers to be able to hold people criminally liable for committing crimes. It's very important that we continue to engage and educate people who don't understand that basic high school civics that we all have to learn. And then the bigger issue really is you got to hold these prosecutors accountable and so forth. When they don't charge, they don't zealously represent the dead person. I know I have a thing that I literally did before the United States State Department where I gave a speech. The dead cannot cry out for justice. It's up to the living to do it for them. And so we have to cry out every time these prosecutors who don't want to charge these police officers for killing Black people, when they don't do it, we have to make them accountable. And then the other thing I'll say, Mr. Payne, to that is really what happened to George Floyd. People said, oh, well, they got this civil settlement, then that means they ain't gonna get any criminal conviction. They took the money. I would never take the money. It's the most asinine thing I've ever heard in my life, y'all. The fact that it's almost, they're saying, well, Black people, you all don't get full justice. You can't get your full constitutional guarantees. You can't get a civil resolution and civil justice and expect criminal justice either. Well, you know, it's interesting. In Minneapolis, a white woman got killed 3 years ago named Miss Diamond in a very controversial case. A lot of people thought if she was a Black woman, she wouldn't have got a penny. They shot her in a dark alley behind an apartment complex. She had drugs in the system and had something in her hand, and the officer thought she had a weapon and shot and killed her. And he was a officer of African descent. Well, he went to prison for 15 years and her family got $20 million. And nobody said because her family got $20 million that she shouldn't expect to get criminal justice. But they have tried to marginalize minorities in America so much to say, oh, you can't get full justice, you can only expect partial justice. Well, we have to say we object to that. We don't have to settle for partial justice. We should be able to get civil justice under the 7th Amendment and criminal justice under the 10th Amendment. And we are Americans. We deserve everything that the Constitution promises to Americans. And so I believe in George Floyd. I believe in my heart that they're going to get a criminal conviction as well, because Keith Ellison, the first African-American prosecutor in the Attorney General in the state of Minnesota, who has a track record, has been a champion for civil rights, is doing a very good job. And I believe in my heart that they're going to get a conviction. Now, my heart has been broken in America. And as a Black person, you can never, ever take for granted, Brother Glover, that a police officer will be convicted for killing a Black person in America. You can't ever think that is a foregone conclusion. I don't care how much evidence you have. And so that's why everybody is focused in like a laser on George Floyd case to say, all right, America, here's your chance. You want us to trust the system, as one of George Floyd brothers said, show us that the system is fair, because we don't have any doubt in our mind that if the roles would have been reversed and George Floyd would have put his knee on Derek Chauvin's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, everybody knows that he would have been convicted. It ain't no doubt from anybody. P. Frank, it wouldn't even be newsworthy how fast they would have arrested him, and he never would have got a bond. He would have stayed in prison forever. And people try to say this is a hard case. Mr. Payne, Mr. Moore, they lying. This is not a hard case. The only reason they say this is a hard case is because George Floyd is Black. And I actually told the crowd to tell people this murder case is not hard when you simply watch that torture video of George Floyd. You watch that video, and it's like Philonis, his brother, said, if a Black person can't get justice based on what happened in this video, how can we ever get justice in America? And so this what we have to stay steadfast and continue to hold America's feet to the fire and demand justice, full justice, not just partial justice.
Attorney Crump, we have some breaking news. Your media team just tapped into us and told us you have till 7:15.
Thank you. That's very good. And also
Yeah,
the
so
George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We all got to be signing petitions. We had a stalemate, Congressional Black Caucus, this important legislation to try to prevent some of these hashtags that President Biden is ready to sign. But the Republicans are saying they don't think they need to have reform in policing. They think policing is working just fine in America. And so we have to be engaging in our activism and talking to our senators and telling them, whether it's petitions or what have you, we need to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Accountability Act, because if we don't do this, if we don't take advantage of this moment, just imagine how many hashtags we're going to see next year.
yes, and now we're going to move on into the crowd asking questions. I do have one before we actually take one from the crowd that got direct message to me that I think is important. It states that Georgia has recently passed laws to restrict voting, and it seems like it's 10 steps back. What do we do as citizens in this society to basically make sure that doesn't continue to happen in other states?
Well, just like with the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, federal law can preempt state actions. And so right now, President Biden and a lot of the members of the minority congressional caucuses are contemplating federal legislation to stop them from being able to usurp our most fundamental constitutional right, and that is to vote. So what we have to do is continue to be active. We have to engage, we have to educate, and we have to empower. We have the power. I think if 2020 showed us anything, it showed us when they say our vote don't matter, it's a lie. The reason why President Biden is president is because minorities came out and voted in record numbers in inner cities, especially Black and brown people. And when you think about in Georgia specifically, those two senators that gave President Biden the Senate he wanted, again, it was for Black people coming out to vote in record numbers. And so our votes matter, and they're afraid of it, y'all. That's why they're doing this, what they're doing. They know that if we vote, then they won't win if everybody's allowed to vote. That's why they're trying to stop people from voting, convicted felons from voting. So one of the things we have to do is get the federal government, but then number two, whatever rules they putting in place, we still can go beat them at their own game, show up early, do whatever we got to do to vote, like they did in Georgia, and then take over where we can change all the rules they made. The only reason they're allowed to make the rules right now is because they have a governor who's a Republican in Georgia, and he's going to be challenged by a Black woman named Stacey Abrams, and they think that Stacey is going to beat them. And so that's why they're trying to stop it. We got to show them that no matter what you do, Stacey going to win anyway. And when Stacey becomes governor, you know, the first thing she going to do, she going to take back all that craziness that they're doing now to deny Americans their most fundamental constitutional right, and that is the vote. And I digress just to talk about restoration of felon rights, because we have to be honest every chance we get to. The school to prison pipeline, this target on our backs, in states like Florida, my home state, and Texas and Tennessee, 1 out of every 5 Black men is a convicted felon. And if they say, if these trends continue in the next 25 years, 1 out of every 3 Black men will be convicted felons throughout the country. And so we have to vote like our life depends on it. Because just think about it, y'all. And I know some of y'all can't fathom this, but some of us older ones can. Imagine if you have a Black male son, and you have a Black male nephew, and you have a Black male cousin. If these statistics are true, in your mind's eye, try to imagine those 3 little boys at ages 5, 6, 7 years old playing, and try to figure out, as you observe them in your mind's eye, in the next 10 to 15 years, which one of them will be labeled as a convicted felon and live the rest of their entire life as a permanent underclass citizen. That's what we're fighting on with these elections. And that's why we have to vote so they can't continue to target us. Part of that is to get the cheap labor from the prison and industrial complex, but another part of that is to make sure that we don't have votes to put them out of office. Yeah, they can see as clear as day, we're growing. It's more of us than them, these enemies of equality. So in states like Georgia, that is, states like Georgia, states like Texas, that were traditionally red states, they're starting to turn purple on their way to turning blue. And that's, can you imagine if Texas turned blue? I mean, you might not ever have another Republican president. That's why they're trying to stack the game. That's why they don't want you to vote. They can see you coming, President Moore. They can see you coming, President Payne. They're trying to do everything in their power to stop it. And that's what this fight is about. That's what this fight about. I know we got a couple more questions, and they down there waiting? Okay. I know the Floyd family waiting on me, but that's fine. They're going to wait, because I got San Diego State right now.
Okay, this last question came in from Isis Werner. Her question was, how do you maintain faith throughout everything going on? And how do you just maintain and keep up hope?
How do I maintain faith? You broke up a little bit.
You need to repeat that.
Yeah, something happened with the connection. Can somebody repeat the question for him?
I said, how do you maintain faith when you realize you can't save or how do you maintain faith when you realize you can't save or help anyone or everyone? My bad. Can't save or help everyone. And this question came from Isis Werner.
Now, Attorney Brenner, it is quite simple to me. So much of what I do is follow the pattern of my North Star, who is Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall understood that there were so many injustices to Black people, so much injustice in the world, that you couldn't be able to combat each and every one of them yourself. But what he understood was when he took cases, he would not just take a case that would impact that individual family,
he would take cases that will have the greater impact on society as a whole. So when I take a case like George Floyd or Pamela Turner, who you're going to hear back in the next couple of weeks, it shocks the conscience. And what you're trying to do is use that case to have a greater impact on other cases that you can't get to. Because you're right, our phone rings so much that we probably only get about 10% of the calls that we can actually get the people and help them. And there's so much need for people to be able to get good representation. That's why I try to inspire so many of the next generation lawyers. I know I can't do it all on my own. It's going to take an army of us fighting on the front line every day to be able to make this difference. And we have to remember that one person can make a change if they just have the courage to take a stand. And we can never forget that. And I'll say in conclusion, you know, Dr. King said that the coward will ask the question, is it safe? He said expediency will ask the question, is it politically correct? He said vanity will come along and ask the question, is it popular? But then he said conscience will come along and ask the question, is it right? And Dr. King concluded that there comes a time when one must take a position that's neither popular nor politically correct or not even safe. But there comes a time when one must take a position because their conscience tells them it is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do to stand up for our children. It is the right thing to do to speak up for our children. It is the right thing to do to fight for our children. Our children's lives matter, and we have to fight for them until hell freezes over. And then we have to be ready to fight on the ice. That's how much our children got to know we believe in them. That's how much our ancestors believed in us in those cotton fields. I mean, children yet unborn, we knew that they were going to be the key to us overcoming this racism and oppression. And so you just got to keep fighting. Just hold the line for the next generation to come and push us forward. It's a journey to justice. And we have to always keep going forward on that journey. God bless you all. I believe in you all so much. You all are the future. Y'all are the best we have to offer the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming to Turn Up. You know that you have to go ahead and go to another interview, but we just want to say thank you for all that you're doing, and we appreciate you. We had some questions from the audience. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and email those to Cliff, and if maybe in a couple of weeks you could send us an answer to those, we can get those out to the people.
I look forward to it. I'm going to come out there and be with P. Frank and you all, the Aztec family.
Let's go Aztecs.
We're going to have a big march, a big rally for Anthony McClain in Pasadena, California. Hopefully some of y'all can come up as soon as we finish this George Floyd trial, because the DA cannot let officers get off when they shoot black boys in the back running out of their shoes. That's how much they were trying to get away from. So hopefully I'll see all of y'all at that rally. Justice for Anthony McClain. Thanks, Keon Harrell. Love y'all, brothers. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace. Thank you to the staff for putting this on. This is so amazing. Thank y'all so much.
Great job.
Outstanding job.
Thank you. Dr. Green will be dropping a survey in our chat box. If you could please fill that survey out for us, that will help us provide us with feedback that we'll need to make sure that we're doing programs that are great. We do have some upcoming events coming up. On April 18th, we have Squad Goals, the male perspective. On April 19th, we have Brian Terrell from Broadway to Baltimore. He was the, from Baltimore to Broadway. He was the lead singer of Hamilton. And then we want to do something really special. We have Frank Williams, who will be coming from us, who's an San Diego State alum, who will be doing the Give Back. Why now? The Give Back. And so we want to have someone there. And then we'll finish out our semester with Pastor Teray Roberts and Sarah Jakes Roberts. Again, we want to say thank you for coming out, and sorry, we had some breaking news that he had to get out here a little earlier, and we apologize for that, but we'll bring Ben back and we'll make sure we go support the march. I want to thank our moderators, Shockey Moore, who's an amazing young man, an amazing example on this campus, and we thank you for what you do. As he called you, I'll repeat what he's called you already, because we speak you into existence, President Moore. And then Stephen Payne, we speak you into existence. Thank you for being a young man only in 9th grade, moderating a huge event. And then thank you to everybody who came out and joined us tonight. We appreciate you, we love you, and we hope to see you at our next event. And then finally, a huge shout out to my graduate advisor, Dr. Tanika Green, who has to put up with all my crazy ideas and all my thought processes of bringing speakers to the campus. This work cannot be done without her. And thank you to our Black Resource Center on campus, who was also a huge support system to tonight's program. So thank you, and see you at our next event.
Bye, everyone.
Great to see you all. Let's go, Aztecs.